Hello, and welcome to Neography A to Z. On this channel, I take a look at constructed and natural writing systems for both their functionality and their aesthetic appeal. This episode, we'll be looking at Sitelen or Sitelen Kuwi by Dante de Graaf, otherwise known as Clockwise 3411 on social media, specifically Reddit, created in 2025. I received an email from Dante requesting that I review his script. He provided a link to a website containing a detailed description, and I was able to find several examples of his script on Reddit. Based on these, I thought it was appropriate to provide a full review of his script. There are literally dozens and dozens of scripts that have been developed over the years for Toki Pona, some of which are worthy of a review, such as Sitelen by Jonathan Gable, previously reviewed on this channel. Others of which, in my own opinion, are not necessarily worth a review. However, the creator of Sitelen or Sitelen Kuwi emailed me directly, requesting a review of his script. That is why that script was picked for a review after my initial Toki Pona video. I hope you enjoy it. In Dante's own words, he provided a rationale for why he decided to create Sitelen Kuwi. Quote, Sitelen Kuwi has its own visual identity and writing style, apart from Sitelen Pona and Sitelen Kuwi. It is for those who want to experiment with something new while staying true to the essence and structure of Toki Pona. My hope is that Sitelen Kuwi will find its own niche, just as Sitelen Kuwi has, and live in tandem with Sitelen Pona, Sitelen Lasina, and all other Sitelen the community has come to adore. He also goes on to say, quote, for a very long time I have been drawn to the idea of creating a new script for Toki Pona. Written language is my passion, beyond all else. I love seeing new and innovative ways to mark thoughts on paper and finding something beautiful in the different shapes of other languages. And through this passion, I wanted to contribute to Toki Pona. But I wanted to do something that hasn't been done before, so I needed to approach it differently than I would any other project of mine. Now let's take a look at the functionality. The majority of the images in the functionality section of this review are taken from a PDF available on Dante's Github site about the script. Quote, Sitelen is a block-based system similar to Korean, with each block containing up to 3 pieces, 2 semantic halves and 1 grammatical marker. There you see the image with the grammatical marker to the left in yellow and the 2 semantic halves in red. The top half of the block is usually the head noun or verb, and the bottom half is usually an adjective or adverb. There is an example. Soweli. I don't know what that means, but there it is. So immediately we know that this isn't exactly like Korean, as Korean currently uses an alphabetic system, not semantic and or grammatical graphemes. However, interestingly, it does work similar to Hanzi or maybe Kanji, which Dante mentions in other places on his website. The idea of packing as much information into a single glyph or glyph block isn't unique, but it is rarer than simple phonetic representation. Essentially, Sitelen functions as a logosyllabary with semantic and grammatical graphemes. He goes on to say, so, when is the top block not a head noun or head verb? Well, when it's acting as an adjective for another head noun, such as in Soweli Lili Sui Mute. Again, I don't know Toki Pona. It goes on, so when does the bottom half of the block not represent an adjective or an adverb? Well, imagine an instance where I don't want to use an adjective or an adverb. Maybe I just want to say, Soweli li lili. And there he gives an example. I will say that the alteration of glyph element placement for grammatical indication is uncommon in natural scripts. This initial passage is about the preceding slide. This somehow doesn't look right. They aren't blocks any longer, instead some uneven row of glyphs. That's where the special glyph comes in handy. That specific glyph has no pronunciation. Its sole purpose is to be a quote-unquote empty adjective or adverb. So let's take a look at Soweli Lili again, but using our new glyph. And there he provides an example of fully fleshed out or complete glyphs. The null glyph serves solely grammatical or morpholexical role, which is somewhat unique in natural scripts. Instead of adding this quote-unquote empty glyph, the writer can instead stretch the primary noun or verb to take up the whole space or the entirety of the block. So, Soweli Wile ala Ekili can look somewhat differently on the examples provided. The null glyph can be removed, which allows for an aesthetic and functional flexibility that most scripts don't always have. This slide provides details about the particles. Quote, as mentioned before, particles are strictly grammatical in nature, so they aren't given the same visual space as content words. Instead, they are added to the side of the content block, taking up much less space. Here's an example. Soele, li, moku, e, kili. And here's a list of all the grammatical particles provided on screen. The grammatical particles being separate gives the functionality a very synthetic appearance, but works for a language like Toki Pona, given its severely limited vocabulary. Additionally, as can be seen above, the particles sit on the left side of the glyph. They modify, all except la, which sits to the right side of the phrase it modifies, such as in Timpo pini la saweli lili limoku. Function words. What I consider function words are words that don't carry a lot of grammatical weight or a lot of semantic weight, somewhere in between. These are words like kin, tasso, and a. These function words also have their own visual identity. Seeing as they are somewhere between grammatical and semantic, they visually are somewhere in between blocks and sticks. Here, take a look at Sowele li wile moku tasso, ona li yo ala e moku pona. And here is what I consider a list of function words, provided on screen. To me, the distinction of function words as vertical, solitary glyphs seems to provide the reader with grammatical or morphological hint, but would do the same if rendered as a regular stylized glyph, given the nature of Toki Pona grammar. So I'm not sure it's necessary. Continuing the description of function words, but wait, some of these function words can also be used as content words. How can we achieve this? Well, the solution is easy. Just flip it on its side and use it as such. So wele li wile moko tasu, ona li yo e kiwen taso. All function words can be flipped on their side and used as content words, just in case you want to get experimental. But be careful, some of these may create unintended ambiguity due to slightly resembling other content words. So my question, if they can be rendered in either manner, the question would be ultimately up to the writer, and thus not as much grammatical as it is colloquial or even parochial. I'm not sure it's necessary. Continuing his description, Dante goes on to say, a lot of what makes this Sitelen special, in my opinion, is the ability to clear ambiguity in certain cases without changing the language. Sometimes the role content words play in a sentence can be slightly unclear, but there is a solution to this. Take this for example, O pana e saweli tawe mi. Most people would understand this to mean something like, give me the animal. But what if the writer didn't intend this meaning? Instead, for some reason, they wanted to say, release my moving animal. Well, let's look at this second interpretation first. He renders the example, and then he says, as you can see, tawa is occupying the bottom half of the block. This defines it as an adjective for saweli. Thus we have the interpretation, my moving animal. For me, though, while this may seek to remove ambiguity, Toki Pona is inherently designed to be ambiguous by default. So this feature might work in a literary sense, but it does not remove ambiguity entirely. Here he provides a contrasting example to the previous slide. We can see here that there's an intentional separation between saweli and tawa using the null glyph. This helps to emphasize that tawa is working as a preposition. For me, though, this would seem to be more redundant than anything. If the role of a morpheme is understood grammatically, it would not necessarily need to be marked orthographically. Continuing his description, Sitelen has a phonetic script that can be used along with the regular script to aid in communicating names and foreign words. Some people, hopefully, will find this useful. Others may prefer the method Sitelen Pona uses. I'm for the latter. I think Sitelen Pona's method for writing out names allows for some amazing creativity that I just can't duplicate here. Regardless, here's how that looks. He then provides a Toki Pona sample and the glyphs that he has designed. So, as with any logographic script, Sitelen or Sitelen Kuwi has accompanying phonetic elements, or maybe even you could call it graphemes. Elsewhere on his site, Dante provides the punctuation that he created for Sitelen Kuwi. He has a period, a question mark, exclamation, semicolon, as well as a set of parentheses. They work as they would in almost any other script, and they're nothing really special. But Toki Pona only has 2 lexemes for numbers, and there are no numerals needed for this script. So it's nothing fancy. Now let's take a look at the aesthetics. While I don't necessarily enjoy the fact that Dante chose Toki Pona as his inspiration, I do find the intricacy and overall well-aligned design of his script to be really nice. It gives sort of a Pacific Islander feel that I think a lot of people try to attain and never really succeed. It's clear to me that Dante has worked on this design, maybe not the Toki Pona aspect of it, but the overall design and the aesthetic for quite a while. It's clearly well thought out, and I think it works well given what it's used for. I just think that maybe he should design something for a new language. In his presentations, Dante has added multiple layers of artistry that anyone should be able to appreciate just for the simple dedication and attention to detail that it takes. Again, though, this is all for Toki Pona. It's clear to me, anyway, that Dante has a keen artistic eye and that his artistry is something he takes seriously and is very well done and very mostly unique as well. If he were to apply this to his own work more, I think that he'd probably be very satisfied with the results. One of the things I appreciate most of all with Dante's glyphs is the compactness. When you can fit that much information into a single glyph or a single glyph block, you're really providing sort of a linguistic feat that most scripts don't match. As you can see here on the far left are the glyphs. In the middle is the transliteration into Toki Pona in the Latin script. And on the far right, you see the English translation. So destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated, gets whittled down to 5 overall glyph blocks. I think that that part of this is really well done. Again, I just think it should be for an original language. So using Dante's font, I was able to write out Pona Tawasina, which apparently is one way of saying thank you in Toki Pona. I'm not really sure. I don't really know Toki Pona that well. Now, I'm going to give the rating functionality 2 out of 5, primarily because the null glyph is kind of silly. Why would you even have it if you can stretch out the glyphs? I'm not too keen on the punctuation just sort of floating out there, given how all of the other glyph elements are anchored to something, including the grammatical markers. The function words being sort of independent and standing up on their ends, while it does sort of help the reader by contrast, it's not really necessary per se. Again, if you're able to stretch a half glyph into a full glyph block, I don't see the point in turning them on their sides. That's just my take on the functionality. As far as for the aesthetics, it's a 4 out of 5. It's extremely well done. You can tell that Dante spent a good bit of time on it, and I very much appreciate his artistry. Ultimately, though, Dante's script suffers by being designed for Toki Pona and relying too heavily on the grammar of Toki Pona for its functionality. As mentioned, the design aesthetic is really, really good and gives the script a hint of naturalism, and Dante's artistry is unquestionable. I hope he designs his own conlang and extends this script for that language. I think that would be a really good project for him to undertake. That's my opinion. Those are my thoughts on Sitelen Leko or Sitelen Kuwi. I'm interested in hearing what you think, maybe even about one of the other multitudes of Toki Pona scripts. Make sure to leave a comment down below. Stay tuned for the next script review and be sure to click the bell button to be notified when the next episode is posted. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I very much appreciate your time and thank you for watching. As a note, all relevant links used in the making of this video are in the description. All information is the property of its creators and is openly available online.